I think I'm live. It says I'm live. The audio thing is moving now. Um, Someone do me a favor, leave me a comment. Tell me that I sound right. All right, let me uh, let me repost this. Now I gotta send the links again. All right, cool. Abba fella, thank you. Jeez, what did I do wrong? All right, audio file. Better now. New link. Jeez. There you go away. You don't touch anything. Couldn't have touched anything. I was away. And suddenly nothing works. So let's try this again. All right, I got to put on Blue Sky as well, and I got to put it on Mastodon. Where's Mastodon gone? Trying to be inclusive. Trying to have it everywhere. All right, let's try this. All right, okay. Steve's here, Joe's here, everyone's here. Thank you. Yeah, so I went away, my computer was turned off. I came home and I turned it on and I started the stream. Now, I should have noticed that the Rode, being the big mic I've got down here, input was not doing this. It was for some reason muted. So I removed it and I added it back in again and now we're fine. So there we go. Yeah. Tony from Liverpool. Christopher, g'day. You're somewhere local. Very good. Here in the beautiful Aussie summer. It's so nice to be back. We walked out of the airport yesterday morning. I'm going to repeat everything I said just before because unless you're a lip reader, you heard none of it. But we left a cabin in Norway. So I did this with Scott Helm, in the cabin in Norway, I want to say about a week ago, something like that. Time zones makes it hard. Anyway, we did this. We left the cabin at 7 a.m. Friday morning, and I got here back to home at nearly 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Now that's about 33 hours of travel, which was longish because it began with a 3-hour drive from the cabin in the -6 degrees after everything had like melted and refrozen. Anywhere in the snow is awesome when there's snow. But when it melts, and we were snowboarding at like +5 or something for a couple of days there, so it melts and water goes everywhere, and then it goes to -6 and everything freezes. So that's really good fun to drive on. Anyway, we obviously made it okay. Made it to the airport, waited around the airport for ages because it left lots of buffer because of expecting the roads to be crap. Fly to Dubai, wait around Dubai, fly to Australia, drive home. Yeah, now not too bad. I got 8 hours, nearly 9 hours sleep last night. Sleeping tablet at about 2 a.m. This is the only time I tend to use sleeping tablets these days is when it's travel and when I'm just trying to, you've woken up in the middle of the night, I'm just trying to kickstart the body back into a routine. Once or twice in a row, it's not too bad. Gunnar is from Norway. G'day. I was just in Norway. It was awesome. It was actually my 3rd Norway trip this year. I don't think it'll be as many next year. I say this now. I'd like to travel a little bit less next year. But even as I say that, we're sitting on the chairlift at Hemsedal in Norway the other day, and there wasn't a lot of snow, and it's not, to be honest, it's not a great skiing mountain. And we were sitting on the chairlift and flicking through my socials going, gee, Japan looks really good at the moment. Maybe we could sneak off to Japan at the end of Jan. No, it's nice here. We'll stay home. All right. Let's do sponsor. Last sponsor message of the year. I've got things everywhere now. 1Password. Now, 1Password, my most most important, frequent sponsor of 2024. 1Password Extended Access Management. Secure every sign-in for every app on every device. And, of course, Extended Access Management coming via the Cloud acquisition of, I think it was last year, wasn't it? 2023. Modern security and IT teams need to make sure every identity, device, and application is secure so you don't end up on Troy's website. I added that bit, but you know the problem. Only 1Password, Extended Access Management, or XAM, checks every box. So massive thanks to 1Password. I had a great year with them as well. Really enjoyed hanging out with the 1Password folks in Montreal, watching the golf and the ice hockey, which I've since learned that in Canada is just called hockey because I guess everything's ice. Christopher says, that's a lot of 30+ hour trips this year. Did it once and it wrecked me for a while. Yeah, it's yeah, I think I did four really long trips this year because we're in Europe. When did we go there? Oh no, that's right. Yeah, we're in Paris for New Year's Eve. So we're in Europe at the from the very end of 2023 into the end of Jan, and then we're back in Norway for NDC, and also in Greece in June, and then of course Charlotte and I are in the US and Canada in September, October, and now we've just come back from Norway, and that's not including Japan in April and Fiji in August, which hardly even count because it's like a 2 hour time zone offset. It's so nice at home. The problem is every time I come home, there's a lot of shit not working, including the audio on this PC. We come home and it's like, okay, how many IoT things aren't working? I've got so many Shellys that are now not working. How many Zigbee devices dropped off? Also, all my hydroponics, my 3D printed hydroponics tower, that is not real happy, that whole thing, because everything comes back to tech. Because the 3D printed hose coupler I'd built to automatically dose it with fertilizer had broken, and then the Zigbee valve that I was using to run water back into the hydroponics was uncontactable because it was in a part of the house that worked on the first half of the trip, but not on the second half of the trip for reasons. And then there's branches and stuff everywhere. It's Australia, so there's bugs everywhere. We come home to so many different dead bugs and things around the house. Last time we came home, the dead rat in the back doorstep. What else? What else is broken? Actually, it wasn't too bad. Anyway, Joe says, have you hiked up Prekastollen yet? On a sunny day, it's so awesome. I don't know where that is. Is that this part of the world or somewhere else? But anyway, what else? What else did I put on the list? And I know the two big things I put on the list, but yeah, my intention at the moment is to have hopefully a really quiet, probably next month to 5 weeks. And when I say really quiet, not going anywhere, really starting to smash out some of our Have I Been Pwned backlog stuff, data breach backlog stuff. Probably a good segue into the first meaty item here on the list, rebuilding the front end of Have I Been Pwned. Just as a little quick recap, because this will lead us into UI and UX and JavaScript frameworks, and then why people on Blue Sky don't like me having that conversation on Twitter. We'll get to that as well. Joe says the Pulpit Rock back in Norway. Charlotte, is that the one in Stavanger, the one that has the massive drop that was in Mission Impossible that just has no guardrails, just don't go over the edge? Or is it the one that goes like that, the really curvy one? I could probably Google that. You'll tell me, Joe. I have been to the really weird curvy one. I got a nice photo of Charlotte and I there. I have not been to the Stavanger one. I want to go there because Noel Merrigan's based over there as well. Good friend of the show. A good InfoSec friend at Microsoft there in Norway. Now, Have I Been Pwned? I built in 2013, launched it 4th of December 2013 without expecting it to do anything useful, which is why I gave it a stupid name. And that's why when I built the logo, I was like, I'll just write, have I been pwned? And then I'll put a little SQL injection for apostrophe, semicolon, dash, dash at the end of it. And then, to make it fancy, I'll put a rectangle with curved corners around it. Good to go, job done. 11 and a bit years later, the logo's still there. The logo is just one part of it. And if you think about, I guess, companies that I was going to say trust, but companies that you recognize, they have often have a logo that's very recognizable. They have consistency in branding. You pick up different material and you're like, oh, that looks nice. Now, we really haven't done any of that. I've just whacked the logo on different things. And we've gone from this pet project that was a curiosity through to something which is now, I think, is reasonable to say, an important part of the internet fabric. It's used by so many different organizations in so many different places. It's quoted and appears in the media in so many different places. Obviously, there's the website, there's the social accounts. There are lots of documentation. So we have subscribers that have agreements that are printed on a Word document with the logo at the top. We have material that we share with some of the organizations we work with about what it is that we do. Like there's just lots of different places where a representation of the HIBP brand appears. And it's a bit messy. So there's that. And that's been weighing on me, I'd say, for probably the last year. It's like, this is looking dated. The other thing is there's a bunch of new stuff that we need to build. And I've spoken before about things like, I think most people know how I feel about resellers. Right? Resellers, like the necessary evil of the procurement ecosystem. I would love if someone wants to use one of the Have I Been Pwned subscriptions that needs like a key. I'd love you to go to the website and choose the one that you want, and then you whack the credit card in and you get the key straight away, and it's so easy. Except when it's not, because so many organizations have to go through a reseller, or so many organizations will not pay by credit card. They will only pay if they have a direct debit or an EFT or something like that, which we can't do via Stripe, which means that they then have to go to a reseller. So many organizations want a quote before purchasing. And I go, well, what do you want a quote for? And they say, well, we need to know how much it costs. So we go to the website. It tells you exactly how much. Now, Phil Scott and I had this discussion last week. And then they're like, yes, but I would like it with our name on it. Please. Okay. I guess we can do that. So we have quotes and invoices and things, which of course all need their own branding. But at the moment, this is a manual process. So probably one of the most laborious things that we do, which Charlotte does, is quotes and invoices and things which would all be automatable via the Stripe API ecosystem. So Stripe has got awesome APIs into everything that you can possibly imagine. It's very easy to generate quotes for an API. And in fact, in order to sort of start building out the logic for this, Charlotte's been running a console app that I built. It's literally a .NET console app, proper black screen text input for the last few months, which plugs into all of these APIs. And what we need to do is drop an interface on top of it so that people can actually go through and do this themselves. And of course, there'll have to be all sorts of controls in there to make sure that we don't just get spammed by random quotes. Does that matter? That'd be annoying, but it probably wouldn't matter. Anyway, we'll put controls in. So I need to do that. The other thing is, and particularly for those of you that do have any sort of paid subscription or have been paying, you'll see this is kind of messy, largely because it's an add-on. It was just never meant to be there in the first place. I'm going to the website here. You go to the website. If you want an API key, there's a section where you go API key, and you can go in there and purchase an API key. But that subscription is also relevant for domain searches. And if you go to domain search, there's a domain search dashboard. And of course, if you get a subscription to do domain searches, if you've got a really big one, then that also works with the API keys, but you've got these two different channels. And then we have issues like people say, one of the most frequent tickets we get is, please cancel my subscription. I'm like, well, there's an automated way of doing that. And I'm pretty sure it's actually on the bottom of every invoice as well. But it's not easily discoverable on the website. And then there's also the normal everyday end users without any sort of commercialization on it at all who do the email address search. But there's also the option where you can verify your email address and you can see if you've been in Ashley Madison or other sensitive breaches. So that there's sort of several different channels by which you can be identified and then have certain services made available to you. I was loath to say authenticate because it's just a magic link via email. But anyway, I would like to tie all that in together, and I'd also really, really like to add more visualizations and useful info, particularly for the free public stuff, because I still get lots of questions. I'll try this. I'll put in my Pfizer address, troy.hunt. Funny thing, I was at Microsoft in Norway, 2 weeks ago now, and I was explaining how I've not used this address for almost a decade now. And it's in all of these breaches. And I go in there and I realize it's been in a data breach that I loaded literally just that week. What was it? Was it Demand Science? Hopper Media. Yeah, or maybe it was the week before or something. But anyway, you go in and you search for an address and it says, oh no, pwned. There's some 1Password branding there, which also was an add-on that was never there in the first place. And then beneath that is all the breaches you're pwned in. And I keep getting all of these people pop up and say, how do I know which breach I'm in? I'm like, dude, scroll down. It's like, well, actually, I'm like, archive, because I can't reply to all these people. But there's enough people raising it that clearly there is something there. It's not clear. So anyway, the point is that the whole thing began without expectations of anything. It evolved bit by bit. It's a patchwork job. It needs a really decent refresh and a really good focus on the UX. In terms of the way we interact, the way we display information, the way people navigate throughout the service, and then you combine that with needing to do logo stuff as well, and the whole thing needs to tie in together. Now, I was hoping that I could get enough energy in the left side of my brain to do this myself, and it just never happened. And out of desperation, I went to Fiverr, and I can hear you laughing from here, and yeah, you're right, like that was a dumb idea because the shit I got back was just terrible. So there was a period, I feel like about a year ago, there was a period where we tried finding professional designers. I think I even asked online, and that was a bad mistake as well because I got so many tie kickers and just people who had no idea what they're doing. Charlotte said, look, we should speak to a company in person, like a design company. And I remember us sitting right here in my office having a video con with someone local. And the questions this person was starting to ask was just so totally irrelevant to what we're doing. I literally had the mouse just hovering over the hang up button. I was just going to hang up. And then Charlotte's like, no, like you got to be polite. So we've eventually ended up using a designer in Norway that Charlotte has a long history with, someone that she knows. And we're really happy with what the guy is doing. We spent a bunch of time with him when we were back in Oslo just recently. We've seen first cuts of different proposed models. We did this with Stefan as well, so we've got 3 brains on it now. 100% of the Have I Been Pwned workforce. We're converging on a new brand, and that will then cascade into a new design of a website, which will then, of course, have to cascade into a combination of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, among other things. Which brings us to my tweet this week. Now, I built Have I Been Pwned on the Azure App Service. It's an ASP.NET web app. MVC, it is using on the client side a combination of Bootstrap for design, layout, CSS stuff, and jQuery in part to do things like asynchronous calls and look for button event clicks and pop-up modals and stuff, but also in part as effectively a polyfill. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that term, who remembers IE6? Right? Now, I say this as someone who's just working it out. I'm just about to hit 30 years of building web apps. Jeez, cracky. 95 was when I started. And back in the day, and really up until a decade ago, we had a lot of fragmentation with different browsers and supported paradigms, whether they be initially the HTML ones or then CSS and JavaScript. You know, there was a time where there wasn't CSS. Like we had to wait a long time, multiple years before we had CSS. And jQuery has been great at being a polyfill such that you can do things like make asynchronous calls with a simple Java or jQuery rather command, which of course is just a wrapper around JavaScript anyway. And you could do this one piece of code and it would make the request. So anyway, look, that's the backstory. This is why I chose the things that I chose. And they have lasted well. We're still on Are we on Bootstrap 3 or 4? Let's control U this on Have I Been Pwned. I feel like it's 4 because I know there's 5 now, but that doesn't seem like enough. Bootstrap. We're on Bootstrap 3, 3.3.7. So, Bootstrap has moved along a lot. It's questionable how important jQuery is now compared to native JS, vanilla JS, because the same polyfill requirements aren't there as what we had in 2013. So I thought I'll ask, this is actually, I was sitting in the airport at Oslo, I think. It's like, I'm going to need some entertainment while I'm flying. And tweets are good because they're short and Emirates has fairly crappy Wi-Fi. It's still amazing that you have Wi-Fi at 30,000+ feet, but fairly crappy. So I put out this tweet I said in 2013, I built the front end of Have I Been Pwned on Bootstrap and jQuery. In 2025, Stefan and I are rebuilding it as part of a rebrand. What would we use? What should we use, rather? What are the front-end tools that make web dev awesome today? Vanilla, HTML, CSS, and JS aside, of course. Now, I knew this would get a lot of responses. And in classic Twitter, now X style, a lot of arguing. 230,000 views on this tweet. And this went, putting it back in my time zone now, this is 2.5 days ago. Now, this is going to be relevant when I talk about some of the experiences on Blue Sky in a moment as well. But that's 230,000 exposures for that. Where do I get the little stats? View post engagements. What? No, where's the analytics? View post analytics. 230,000 impressions, 9,600 engagements. That's a lot. 1,500 hearts, 300 responses. It did keep me entertained on a very long flight. I'm going to read the comments and I'll tell you what the consensus, which of course isn't there, was. Geo Illy just says, just tuned in. Thank God you ignored the JS framework Andy's for the new UI interface. Jay is glad I resolved the audio issues. Thanks for sharing experience HLBP and where it's headed. Yeah, well, it's fun. What can I say? Milford, good morning. Mr. Starting Context, fill me in. Starting context was my audio didn't work and I spoke for a couple of minutes like an idiot with no one able to hear it, so I had to stop it and start it again, and now we're good. Christopher says, build with what you know and what you're productive with. Let's pivot off that, because I think that's actually a really important point. This is so going to tie into the next topic on Blue Sky. There are a lot of different people out there with different opinions, whether they be about politics or social things or JavaScript frameworks. And there are a lot of people with very strongly held positions on these. And I'm sure that of all of the different alternatives people have mentioned, there have been awesome things built with each of them. But to the point that Christopher just made, there is a lot to be said for working with what you know. Now, I say that as someone who has on many occasions really enjoyed just sitting down and learning something new. ASP.NET MVC, perfect example. I built web forms for years, and before that, classic ASP. And MVC was there for quite some time. And I remember eventually, remember what it was? John Galloway from Microsoft had a walkthrough to build it was like a music store app in MVC. And I really enjoyed taking a few weeks to sort of sit there and go through it all and learn all of these new constructs and these models and views and controllers and things that were so different. That can be fun in the right time where you're doing it to better yourself and learn something new. But there is a lot to be said, per Christopher's point, particularly when you are working with something pre-existing and important, and if you're working without the luxury of having lots of free time just to muck around, it's a lot to be said for working with what you know. So keep that in mind as we go along. Other people chatting there. I'll come back to this. So there were some constant suggestions that came back. And then it all got into a lot of arguing, which also, when you're stuck on a long flight, is entertaining, if I'm honest. Well, first things first, we are talking about the front end. And just in case there's any ambiguity at all to that term, we're talking about the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And of course, there'll be some graphical assets as well. Now, and that's pretty much it. And back in the day, when I started with my HTML for Dummies book, which is still up there on my shelf in 1995, it was literally like Notepad, handwrite HTML, and that was it. Now, of course, as time has gone by, we've had everything from better IDEs through to tools that can generate content for you. There's a lot of suggestions around AI in here, which we might chat about in a moment as well. A lot of frameworks like Bootstrap, for example, that can take away some of the manual labor of building things. Bootstrap doesn't do anything magical in terms of creating CSS that never existed before, but it literally just wraps it up for you. And really my question was about, are there things out there that can help us build this system in a more efficient way. Now, that might be more efficient in terms of less work, better compatibility, better accessibility, perhaps less maintenance in the future. A lot of the suggestions, just to talk about specific frameworks, that the two things that came through most frequently, of course, there's all the React and Angulars and everything in there that you'd expect. Two things that came through most frequently were Tailwind and HTMX. Now, if I'm honest, I don't think we'll use either of those, but I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that anecdotally, this wasn't a poll where I can measure the numbers, but anecdotally, they were the two suggestions that came through most frequently. So I started downloading Tailwind and HTMX videos when I was sitting in the lounge at Dubai. It's like, okay, I can have a read of some of this as I'm flying. And I've spent probably like 15 or 20 minutes on each. And I think they're very cool. And I think that if I was starting out with some greenfield project and I was starting to learn something completely new, I'd probably go down that path because that's what's popular today. The hesitation I have with both of those is that I'm sure I'd seen the names somewhere before, but for the life of me, when I saw them start to pop up on my Twitter thread, I was like, what the hell is Tailwind and HTMX? Now, the reason I mention that is because if I ask this question again in another 5 years, I think I'll get completely different answers. And there is a lot to be said for these native vanilla constructs, which are simply nothing more than what the browser supports out of the box. I'm conscious that if we go down, say, an HTMX path, and I did see really good engagement too, I'll add, from the HTMX_org X account. I'm going to try and say X. Get over it, move on. From the X account. Seemed like really nice person, whoever's behind it. My fear is that will be something else that dates. And unless there's a solid enough reason to do that over and beyond hand coding the thing, I'm just not sure that it makes a lot of sense. And the impression I got looking at some of the very brief tutorials on HTMX as well is there's probably going to be a bunch of impact on the way we do things on server side in terms of the types of content and the format of content that APIs need to return. Now, someone will tell me I'm completely wrong there, but again, this is like a jet lagged 15, 20-minute review from the videos. I do think Bootstrap is a little bit of an exception, only insofar as Bootstrap is just CSS. Actually, there is a JS component to it as well. It's just CSS and JS, but it is something that's been around for a very long time, and it does have a very, very definable purpose. That's something that both Steph and I are already really familiar with because the entire freaking site is built on it. So my gut feel at the moment is to do as much native front-end work as possible, plus Bootstrap. Gut feel, I don't think we need jQuery anymore, or an equivalent. I just don't think we're going to need that. So what the comments say. James says, that's how I started too, which I assume you mean HTML and Notepad. There weren't a lot of HTML programming guides on the web. You had to buy a book. So fun story. I started university in 1995. First time I saw the web. University just over here close to me. First time I saw the web, I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. I want to build web pages. I'll just do a course at university to build web pages in 1995, which of course didn't exist. So I got that For Dummies book, and I remember so without sort of giving too much away, I was still a teenager. And I remember reading the HTML for Dummies book on a bus to go and visit my grandmother in country Australia. And that was where I started. And I still have that book there today. And I actually really like having that fundamental grounding. And what's it like for kids these days learning to build on the web? Like, do they start, for example, with HTMX and Tailwind and don't really understand what it's doing? I suspect that's a big part of it. Milford, did the books come with alphabet letters you had to arrange in a Scrabble type, be able to practice tables and body tags? So funny thing is, and I was looking at this book quite a bit in the middle of the year because when I did the opening keynote at NDC Oslo in June, I was referring to this book, and it's all still really, really familiar. And then the main thing that struck me is all the tags are in uppercase, which just feels really, really weird now. And I'm not quite sure when and why we pivoted, but yeah. All right. Brad says, Tailwind, brother. Yeah, well, And that's probably awesome. Lots of other comments that were in here. If I'm just spinning through, Blazor, Tailwind, jQuery, HTMX, new hotness, a bunch of the AI one got funny. A bunch of suggestions about using AI. Now, the one that strikes me the most, and I won't read it precisely because I don't want to throw this guy under the bus because I think it was actually quite reasonable. But someone had suggested building it with AI. We'll just leave that one sitting there. To which this person was like, you shouldn't do that because it will just help AI like take away our jobs and destroy our retirement. Yeah. We're just not at a point where you go into ChatGPT or equivalent and say, please build me a new Have I Been Poem? And you're like, bang, there you go. And as I was trying to say to this guy, it's like that there are things that AI is enormously good at taking away that were never particularly valuable tasks in the first place. Please write me a PowerShell script to iterate through a list of email addresses and call the Have I Been Pwned API at this endpoint. And have a 1 second pause in between. Bam, done. I could work this out by reading lots of code and taking a long time. The AI just automated it for me. Now, if I want to whack that behind an interface somewhere and make it look pretty and make it performant and put it on good infrastructure, we are not at that point where AI does that, and I doubt we will ever be at the point where it just abstracts all of that away. AI is not the fix. AI is the tool that will help you towards the fix. Let's say that. Christopher says, self-taught dev. Started back in 2016. Couldn't afford uni or TAFE. Started with Udemy course. I have issues with Udemy. Google it. Constantly built stuff to automate my day job. Did this job. Eventually switched careers. Well, that's awesome. And one of the things I really love about this industry, and even all this discussion, as difficult as some of it got, is that you can go online and learn all this stuff. Now, I obviously have an affinity with Pluralsight. I learned a bunch of stuff myself from watching other people's Pluralsight courses, and I know people did reading mine. And what I try to tell my kids now is that if you want to do this stuff like this, I actually think going to university is a good thing. It gives you, I say this as someone who dropped out, it gives you a starting point and a focus and repetition, and it helps you on the path to finding the thing that it is that you want to do. But I love the ability to learn so much stuff of your own free volition, literally for free in many cases. All those Tailwind videos I'm watching just on YouTube and HTMX videos. There's so much you can learn for free, and I just think it's a wonderful meritocracy where it just makes knowledge and learning so much more accessible to so many more people than traditional education. Now, I mentioned this is just the client side. There are a bunch of people here who started talking about server-side frameworks. Or put it on Amazon, or something like that. We have a really good back end at the moment that has evolved constantly over the 11 and a bit years. Website looks pretty much identical. The back end is fundamentally different, especially the stuff that gets hit in anger. Where it started out as an ASP.NET MVC web app with some web API built into the web app, all sitting on Azure on top of table storage. We now have still that MVC web app, which serves up what is, for all intents and purposes, almost a static front page. It's now hitting serverless Azure functions on the back end that sit on top of an Azure SQL hyperscale database. And all of that is wrapped behind Cloudflare with Workers, which does massive amounts of education to try and drive the traffic from the origin back up to the edge. It's a really, really different server-side infrastructure. And we're really happy with the way that's working. So our job is to change the facade of that whilst keeping the heart of it the same. Now, of course, as we go and build new things like this ability to do quotes and invoices and all the rest of it, we will build a bunch more service stuff, but it will be on that platform. So we're adamant about that. I see no reason to change that, but I do fully expect it will continue to evolve in time. Even things like Stefan's been actively upgrading versions of .NET frameworks, and we've gotten some really big perf gains from versions of .NET frameworks. Bootstrap haven't upgraded in like a decade. So yeah, the front end is, it's not that it's gone unloved, it just hasn't needed to change. And a bunch of people said, well, look, why change it if it works? And to go back to the additional 2 points, I just really strongly feel it needs a refresh, and we do have a bunch of new things to build. And if I'm going to build a bunch of new things, I'd rather that be the foundation for the next 10 years rather than an interface and a design choices from 11 years ago. That's pretty much it. Do any of you guys recommend outsourcing all the stuff to SaaS providers? How long we got? It depends. A large part of my job at Pfizer. So I started at Pfizer. I'll get to the blue sky stuff. Don't worry, it's coming. I started at Pfizer in 2001 as a developer. And over the course of the noughties, Pfizer did what so many organizations do, which is like, hey, you're a good technical hands-on person. If you'd like your career to progress, you should stop doing that and become a manager, which just sounded terrible, or an architect. And by their definition, an architect was going to make the design decisions around how we built applications, but also be responsible for those delivering them. And long story short, my job ended up as the architect for the Asia Pacific region, where every time we built applications, it could be anything from a clinical trials management system through to adverse event reporting. I took Viagra and I got a rash. We made Viagra. We would build the systems to report that. And my life ended up managing vendors. And a lot of that was building stuff on SaaS. And it was not much fun. I don't know, like maybe there's a good business reason for some of this, but in my experience, a lot of the, I guess, processes we had when things went to SaaS products or they went to outsourced vendors was just series of compromises. I think we could have done much better with good in-house talent. But anyway, that's just me. So that's where we're at. The plan, we've got to push our Norwegian designer as much as we possibly can to get the logo and branding right. And then we've got to start doing the UX of the front end. And then we've got to translate that into HTML and CSS and everything else. And we will go and find someone else, I think, to build that front end, just because trying to make it work consistently across everything and across devices and things is just painful. So I really want to go to someone, and this is like not a call out, because last time I did that, I got so many people contact me who probably shouldn't have been contacting me, but we will find someone of our choosing who can just build all those front end paradigms. And then I think it'll be Stefan and I just wrapping it all in around those existing MVC templates and tying it into those APIs. And I'm really hoping within the first few months of next year, we have a thing. We have a new brand. We'll see. All right, let me talk about the next one. So this, I almost feel it's got more airtime than it deserves. Blue Sky users cranky about X links. Right, scroll back a little bit. One of the big problems I have with processing data breaches is disclosure. Now, the issue that I really have here is that I get given data breaches before other people or before the organization impacted necessarily knows about it. Now, in many cases, that's not the way it works. Ashley Madison, perfect example. Like, they knew they were owned sideways like a month before that data was made public. So there's not like I need to contact them before it goes in and have a been pwned and go, hey, did you know? So no, they don't. But there are loads and loads and loads of cases where that's not the situation, where I don't know if the organization knows or not. Now, there are about a dozen accounts on X that do a really good job of looking at where data has been exposed, particularly on public hacking forums, and summarizing it. Now, I'll give you an example here. And in fact, I'll drop this into the chat here so that everyone can have a look at it. This is going to be a link to X. You will be able to click on it and see this tweet, whether or not you have an X account or not. And we'll come back to that in a moment. This is Hackmatic. Now, incidentally, I caught up with Hackmatic in Dubai. Great organization, lovely people. And I really, as I said to them at the time, this helps me a lot that they have something on the public timeline. So they had this tweet out here, December 12. Young Living Essential Oils. Now, Young Living Essential Oils is, I mentioned this last week when I was chatting with Scott, a multi-level marketing organisation that sells essential oils. Let's just leave all the issues with MLM aside. That's not really the point. The point is that they did have a data breach. Their data was publicised on this popular hacking forum. There is a screen cap of that in Hackmanic's tweet. I tried to get in touch with the organisation. I tried multiple different people via LinkedIn in executive positions who should be responsible for this sort of thing. I definitely tried their customer support email address. I could not get a response from anyone. So now I'm left with a situation where there's over 1 million people in this data breach. I have the data. Thousands, probably tens of thousands of other people have the data because on a popular hacking forum. What do we do? They're not replying. I've gone through all of my due diligence, sufficient to be confident that I've done my best to get in touch with them. I want to load it. I want to let these people know. I really want a reference. I don't want to just, I think there's probably two things here. I don't want it to look like the only knowledge of this is this have I been pwned system where I have this data and no one else knows about it. I want to point to the fact that there is discussion on the public timeline. Part of this is because if they learn that the data is going to have been pwned and they lose their shit about it, I want to make it clear that, look, guys, it's all over the place. This is one place that it is, and I did my best to get in touch with you. Here's my disclosure timeline. The other thing I want to do is I want to give more context for people. So let's say with 1 million people, let's say I send 10,000 emails to subscribers, and 10,000 people hear about Young Living Essential Oils, and I've got usually 2 sentences there in the description. I want to link them through to something where they can see the full details. Well, they can see more details. So I'll read you what's in here. In fact, just for full context, I'll read you the message that I put on each social platform because at the moment when we say each one, we'll come back to that as well. I'm putting stuff on X, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. And the message on each one says, new breach, Young Living Essential Oils had 1.1 million unique email addresses breached and advertised on a hacking forum this month. Data included name, country, and date of birth. 78% were already in have been pwned. Read more, and then there's a link to the tweet with the extra details. Now, just to be clear, if there was a news story about this on a website, I would link to that instead of to this for 2 reasons. Number one, it's platform agnostic. Everyone would be able to access it and not get pissed at me. Number two, it would be a news story. It would be a bigger piece of more useful information. So that was my parent message on all the social platforms. Here's what's actually in their message. It's a lot more detail. A potential data breach involving Young Living Essential Oils has been detected on a hacking forum reportedly affecting 1.1 million users. According to the post, leaked data includes information such as full names, email addresses, physical addresses, and orders of 1.1 and a bit million users. The authenticity of these claims yet being verified, but in the meantime, users of Young Living Essential Oils are advised to remain vigilant against potential phishing attempts. They've then screen capped it, the post to the popular hacking forum. And here you can see the person selling it, 888, good on you, with the Bugs Bunny and a tuxedo icon. We've got a great big icon here of Young Living Essential Oils. They're talking about the revenue. They're talking about all the data that's included there. They've got just the column headings of a sample, and then Hackmanic has cropped it such that they're not exposing any PII, so good on them for that. You've got all of this extra context and extra information. This is relevant. This is useful. Including this is an important part of the narrative about what has actually happened. So, what's the problem? let's just start reading the problems. Someone here has said, I know this is just chronological, I'm not singling people out. Hey Trohan, if possible, could there be other ways to read more sections not linking to Twitter? I understand that's not something you would like to do, but I thought I would put it out there for others as well. Now that's polite and reasonable, and I said, okay, well, what's the problem? And they said, unless you're signed in, Twitter shows only the tweet that is directly linked without its replies. Now, several people made the issue that they can't see everything because, and people use terms such as it's not an open platform or because you need to be signed in. That's not the case. That's absolutely not the case. Now, there's Two big problems with that. Number one is that even if you're in, let's try this. Let's be in the Blue Sky app. So I can be in the Blue Sky app. I can see that message that I posted. Looks just a bit too much contrast. A bit like this. I can see the link here, x.com/. I can click on that, and every single thing that I just read you is visible here. You do not need to be signed in. It is publicly accessible, whether you call it open or not. It's the same as whether you call Facebook or LinkedIn open or not. This is not a question of openness or interoperability. It is simply about how do we get the information in front of people. It doesn't matter what social platform you are on, particularly if you're looking at it within their native app, and then it pops up the little browser, so you might not already be authenticated to the platform like what I am when I'm on Chrome here. You will still see exactly the content that is relevant. If you then want to read the discussion beneath that, you will need to sign into X. And you can decide whether or not you want to do that. That's not kind of the point. The information is the thing in the parent there. So, that was the first issue. What do other people said here? I've seen people I follow talk about how they often get the same engagement on Blue Sky than X Twitter. There's a whole engagement discussion here, which we'll come back to. Let's look at the comments here so I don't miss anyone. This is mostly about how I've been paying stuff. Just Milford, I'm not sure that's particularly relevant, but I'm going to leave that one sitting there. Okay, so that's just a purely mechanical discussion, and it's wrong. It is just outright wrong that you cannot see the content just because you're over there on Blue Sky signed in. And again, if that information was available in a longer form on a publicly accessible URL, I'd prefer to share that. Just tangentially as well, I guess one of the things that we all dislike about the internet is there's a lot of content out there which is just out of reach. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. I just had to email a journalist because, in fact, I'll see if I can get this link and I'll drop it into the comments. Had to email a journalist. This popped up in my my Google alert search this morning because they made a statement which was incorrect. Honestly incorrect. I'm going to link this here. Now, when you go to this link, when I went to this link this morning, this is on law.com. When I went to this link this morning, I read the story and I thought, okay, cool. I need to talk to this person because it's about the hot topic data breach, and it says that I had emailed 56 million people from Have I Been Pwned, and that's not correct. There were 56 million people in the breach. I have 5 million subscribers. Less than 1% of the 56 million people would have got an email from me. And I didn't want it to sound like I was just spamming tens of millions of people. So I emailed myself the link and like, look, I'll sit at my PC and I'll send it from my PC or I can write it properly. I click on the link and I see probably what many of you are seeing now. Unlock your access to Premier Legal Rights Insights with law.com. It's a paywall. I cannot read the story. I don't like it. It's a bad experience. But that is a big thing on the internet. There's a lot of content behind paywalls. Every time I get a link to something like Forbes, it seems to be behind a paywall. It's annoying. It is what it is. X is not unique for having things behind not a paywall, but an authentication wall. But again, the parent tweet is not. It's still visible to everybody. Now, let me have a look at my profile because then I can see the replies. Incidentally, why am I there in it all? Obviously, there are many different social media platforms. I've been on Twitter for, how long have I been on Twitter now? Since 2008. I've been there since 2008. Facebook since probably before then. LinkedIn probably around then. As other social media platforms have come up, I have put my little flag on my account on those platforms, not knowing what they'll do. Not all of those platforms I've particularly liked. I have an account on Parler. I have an account on Gab, partly because I was just writing about their data breaches and other screwy things. I think I have an account on Truth Social, not because I want to go in there and read the content because it doesn't align to my political views at all, but because I want to own the Troy Hunt account. And if it becomes massive later on and suddenly we all have different political, or we all change political affiliations and we're all like, yeah, let's go Truth Social, I have the account, I have the footprint. When something starts to get enough traction, I start sharing content on there. I tried it with Threads early on. There's just nothing there. When a lot of people started leaving Twitter after Elon came in, I started using Mastodon a lot. There's a lot of people went to Mastodon, so I'll post stuff to there. And it's the same with Blue Sky, where I started putting stuff there. When did I begin? When I first started Blue Sky, it was very early on because I think I got an early invite code. There you go. It was the middle of last year, and then nothing more because that was all 2023, and it's going back through my own public timeline here. Nothing more until very recently when obviously it started getting a lot more traction, started getting a big uptick. So I went, okay, let's jump on. So yeah, I think the last one, you know what's wrong with Blue Sky? Why am I seeing American date formats? Because that says 12/14, but it actually means 12/4. That's 4th of December. Oh, shit. Let's just say time went by and I started posting stuff there again. So it's to have a footprint on these platforms. I don't know if any of these will survive or go down the tube, and I refer to the incumbents here as well. I don't know. It's to have a footprint in each, and then we'll just see what the communities are like in each and which one actually gets traction. Let's go back to these replies and the issues that people are raising. So let's have a look. Let's find some argumentative ones. This person here, Mike W, says, I've found very little in terms of good conversation on X these days. It's just full of shit videos, racism, porn, and MAGA. Most people in our field at least seem to be migrating across here. Mastodon never felt right for me, a bit clunky. You can't say bad things about Mastodon, you'll upset the Mastodon people. Recognising that different people have different experiences based on the way they use the platform. The first point I made here, and I actually linked through to that question about client-side frameworks. That to me is a perfect example of where there is good conversation. I've just put out a tweet that's had nearly 250,000 views to it, lots of conversation that has genuinely helped me make the decision about which framework I use. I have tried on multiple prior occasions to post exactly the same thing to each platform and look at the engagement. And this probably sounds like a really painfully obvious thing to say, but when I've got, how many followers have I got on Blue Sky? 12,000 versus 230,000 on Twitter. So let's call it 20x. If there's X, 230, you know what I mean. If there's 20 times more followers on one platform, even if you make the argument that half of them are bots, and I'm sure it's not half, that's still 10 times. And then if half of those ones are just sitting there doing nothing compared to everyone on the other one being active, it's still 5 times. Like you cannot argue against those numbers. You cannot argue about where the people are. And again, please bear with me here because I'm trying to use all of these in a fairly equitable fashion. Certainly all the automated things I'm posting to each one. And I am having conversations. I do check in. I look at replies. I send them. But please see that I'm trying to spread myself across those 3. I am not spreading myself across other ones I choose not to. Threads, Parler, Gab, Truth, Social. Spoutable. I've got a Spoutable account. If you don't know what Spoutable is, Google that with my name and you'll see. Bashami, I came here from Blue Sky announcement. All right, cool. Well, it's working because I got someone to come and read my stuff, watch my stuff, which is good. Conversations and people's, let's actually address this. Obviously, this is one of the things people are saying a lot on both Mastodon and Blue Sky. That on X, I'll just read Mike's comments again. Full of shit videos, racism, porn, and MAGA. Let me show you what I see, because often I've said to people, look, it's working fine for me. And they're like, no, it's not. You're like, oh, you can't say that. I'll explain exactly how I use it. If I go home, if I go for you, I will see a bunch of stuff that I don't like, a bunch of stuff that is irrelevant, a bunch of stuff that frankly sucks my time. Let's do it just for fun. We're all here learning. Actually, that one was kind of interesting. But just, all right, some woman ranting on there. It's just viral videos and fairly ordinary crap that I feel like I could easily go to Facebook and get. However, if I go to following, I have chosen over a course of many years to follow accounts that I think have a lot of interesting content. Now I'll read through, we're not going to go through all of it, obviously, but just for context, when someone's saying it's full of shit videos, racism, porn, and MAGA, frankly, I wonder what you're looking for. And what I mean by that is maybe you're just scrolling through that general sort of broadcast announcement of all sorts of crap. And if that's the way you want to use the platform, then maybe it's not suitable for you. The way I use it is I go through following. What have I got in here? Dark Web Informer about a data breach, on topic. John Daniel Trask, he's Raygun, isn't he? Founder of Raygun. Yes. Good bloke, talking about Gemini 2. Okay, interesting. SC Media, Slashdot, Dark Web Informer. Anthony Albanese, he's our Prime Minister. Yes, we have a Prime Minister too, not a president. Relevant, Jason Haddix, good guy, interesting information. And there's Casey Ellis from Bug Crowds underneath that, commenting. Friend of mine from Pluralsight posting something else. That's what this is about. Penn State coach. All right, pretty irrelevant to me, but whatever. Lots of Jimmy Carr stuff. I just learned Jimmy Carter. Sorry, Jimmy Carr's fine. Jimmy Carter has made it to 100. Rest in peace. But obviously that's dominant now. That came through via, who's Charles Arthur? He's a journo. A Casey Ellis post. As I read through this, to me, this is about 90% signal and about 10% noise. Now that's my experience. FBI. Follow the FBI. Good people. And it goes on and on and on like this. And I suspect that this is part of the difference, where there's the difference between the fire hose of junk and irrelevant stuff, which is for you, versus the stuff that is from the people that you are following because they share the information that's relevant to you. And I would make the argument that any platform is like that. I see a lot of crap on my Facebook timeline. Now, I spend a bunch of time on Facebook because we have so many friends there outside of this industry. Friends, family that are there sharing information, and I like seeing what they're doing with their kids or where they've been for Christmas. But I hate the constant shit that I see in ads. If I pop Facebook open now, Australian Federal Police, that's interesting. NBN Australia. I do not need to see NBN Australia. That's a national broadband network. Totally irrelevant. Jet ski stuff, that's fine. Insta360 ad, I already have one. Technology something. Car cleaning products, sponsored jet ski, it's cool. Irrelevant rubbish. I get so much more signal out of what's on X than what I do on Facebook. And then there's going to be someone sitting there going, what a bad example. You're picking like the Zuckerberg platform and comparing it with the Elon platform. You're just comparing two bad things. Again, not my experience. Going to have a look at the comments here, and then I'll come back over here. James says, one thing I like at Blue Sky is I can use my domain as my handle. It's easy to set up to. Yep, agree with that. I think that's very cool. I've done that with both my Trojan.com address, and Haverman Pone has one there too. James, problem for me is all the promoted tweets on Twitter. Maybe I don't know how to use it. I'm not really seeing that in following, and I don't know if it's because I give them money each year. Now, maybe that's the difference. Now, in fairness, I would be very happy to give Facebook money each year not to see that. These are still platforms that have cost. I don't have an issue with the fact they have monetization routes. And for me, it's a business tool. It's so much of what I have done, particularly things like Pluralsight courses, where my revenue was entirely dependent on people being aware of them and going and watching them and doing the courses. That's a good ROI. I'm happy to spend. I think I got the bill the other day, like a couple $100 for a year or something, less than $1 a day. I'm fine with that. Milford says, I just pop in there. Now and then, usually close the tab if I can feel my heart rate speed up. It's an easy solution to a common problem. James says, Troy's doing Facebook wrong in my opinion. I let my wife sort through all the crap, then she tells me. Yeah, well, maybe that's it. Now, all the other comments out here. Mike says, do you have any stats on what types of accounts those 200,000 views, this was for the front end comment was, are from real people versus bots? I try not to use these platforms with only people I follow, so that I avoid the echo chamber and maybe miss something good. But I guess it boils down to the problem is, as far as I know, on both Blue Sky and Mastodon, you can't get the same sort of stats as what you get on X. And if you remember, was it 18 months, 2 years ago, X started putting the analytics so that everybody could see how many times a tweet had been seen. I can't get the same analytics, but I do know that anecdotally, when I post the same thing, I get commensurate engagement with the followership of each platform, which means that most of it is on X. He goes on, with regards to it being good conversation to try it, I'm finding this one slightly more beneficial. So in fairness, I think Mike's points here are very reasonable, because he said, look, he's actually finding the conversation beneficial. And my fear is that there is a propensity to throw the baby out with the bathwater, insofar as there are people for whom they do not like Elon at all. And for all sorts of reasons, probably predating X. And if I'm honest, there's a bunch of stuff I don't like about him predating X. I think for me, the low point was remember the Thailand cave thing and the pedophile comment? It's just dumb. It's so much dumb shit that he says. Don't get me wrong about that. This is not like an Elon fan club. I've been so critical for so many years about so much stuff I didn't like around Tesla. And of course, that upset people that were very left-leaning. And now it seems that they're very much going to the other platform. And I fear that part of the problem here is it's become such a politically divisive thing with the platforms, where prior to Elon, Twitter was by any reasonable definition very left-leaning. And now he's come in, a lot of people got very upset about that. And of course, he's reinstated Trump, and you get a lot of stuff there that's from the more right-leaning side of politics. And then a bunch of people are like, well, I don't like that, so I'm going to go to the other platforms so that I can be around people that say the same sort of stuff as me. And that's fine, but I think the thing that I have the biggest issue with, and I won't read these comments because it really does throw people under the bus, is frankly some of the responses bordered on vitriolic about my continued use of X because it supports viewpoints that they don't like. And you'll see lots of terms used in terms of what sort of content they think is on there, which largely boils down to things that are legal but recalcitrant in their views. And frankly, a lot of it recalcitrant in my views as well. And it brings us back to the same discussion we've had so many times when I've been talking about issues with the likes of Parler and Gab that, of course, are much more leaning on the right side of things. There's lots of speech I don't like that is legal. Now, I can filter that out of my timeline. I can filter that out by just going to what's here and following. I can ignore the things I do not like. But there's so much on there which is legal speech. There's that old saying, what is it? Something to the effect of, free speech only works when people who say things that I don't like are allowed to say it. And I think that is a large part of it. Me using the platform is not endorsement of everything he says any more than using Facebook as endorsement of everything that Zuck says. That's not how it works. And I'm just fascinated by how divisive this gets, and especially the hypocrisy of a lot of people saying folks on X are intolerant of others, so I'm leaving that platform and I'm going over to here, and then I start posting across everything. And people are like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm intolerant of you doing that. You should leave the other platform. Oh, that's nonsensical. I chose a nicer word. What I was thinking of using. What else is in here? What was my tweet? What do you call it on Mastodon and Blue Sky? Post? I guess a post. The problem as well is that when I sit here and I'm doing my best to process data breaches, really, really struggling with time, struggling with disclosure, spending hours and hours and hours on something like that essential oils thing, essential living, you know what it is. And eventually get to the point where I can put it out there, and I put it on all these platforms, and people get angry with me because I've posted something on Blue Sky and linked to Twitter. How do you think it makes me feel about posting on Blue Sky? You know, that is a really good way to isolate the platform and the creators who you're trying to bring across from using the platform. And I don't think that the folks getting angry about it are really thinking through that train of thought to very far. If you want to be inclusive, and if you want to feel like people should be able to share content there, then don't say this shit. And it immediately made me thought, I remember exactly where I was. I was in the cabin next door to the one that we just left in Norway. This would have been 2 and a bit years ago. I was there with Scott Helm. And I came out one morning and he said, you wouldn't believe what's just happened. Elon said he's going to start banning people if they post links to other social media platforms. And we both looked at each other and went, this is ridiculous. This is so stupid. And now I'm over here on Blue Sky posting links to the one place a piece of content exists that's on that platform, and people are like, you should be leaving there and not doing that. Hey. Milford. It was a dumb comment, but it was also dumb to take a genuine offer to help for free in an actual emergency and accuse the altruists of PR. What was this one about? I'm not sure. Maybe I should read it before I read it out loud. Read it in my inside voice first. Milford, referencing the Elon Musk offer to help the cave. Okay, yeah, this is the stupid pedo comment that Elon made. Sanaki says, I personally think it is worrying that a billionaire who is basically about to become the shadow VP has control over what people see on their feed. He isn't the only problem, but is the most immediate. I think it's very worrying. I think it's very worrying the amount of control that's exerted by one person. Again, I would argue that you can still choose what you see on your feed. Now, the fact that many other people don't use it that way and they use the For You and they see all of that is very much the same problem we've got with the media, where I know that if I go and watch CNN, I will see a very different political narrative to if I go and watch Fox. And I don't normally watch Fox, so just to be clear, just pin my own political colours to the wall there. I think it's quite concerning. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is either. You know, do you outlaw Musk owning? I don't know. That is something which is beyond my ability to work out. Milford, I think it was silly of him to try and help people to have somewhere to go and see what they want. Completely unnecessary detour the ungrateful user base, regardless of who runs it or whatever. I'm trying to understand what you mean here. I think to make a general comment about this, we all tend to seek out places that reinforce the beliefs that we hold true. Now, whether they're religious or political or what have you, you like to surround yourself with like-minded people. And I think we all have this sort of internal implicit confirmation bias where we look for things that reinforce the things that we hold to be true, whether they are or not. And it does concern me that the platforms reinforce this. And we've seen so much in the news, we've seen so much even from governments that are concerned about this. It is really fascinating to, next time you're on public transport, look over someone's shoulder. Now, I remember when we were in the US in about September, and I was looking over someone's shoulder on a bus, and they were obviously very sort of right-leaning, and they're flicking through their Facebook. And I was like, that is really, really different to what I see when I flick through my Facebook. Because the algorithms are going, well, this person really likes the MAGA stuff, so we're just going to MAGA them up. Now, of course, that's not what I see, partly not being American, and partly being that would not be my political leaning normally. So you get this reinforcement the whole time. And the concern I have is that both ends of the extreme usually tend to be bad positions to be in, and there are two ends of the extreme. And I see it on both sides of it as well. I've certainly seen it on Twitter in the past. And when you look at the sort of content that was banned there, I think if you look through it with an objective lens, much of that content comes down to personal belief systems as opposed to illegal speech. A lot of that I don't like. And I'm not even going to get into the bits I do and don't like because someone will pick that up and quote it and put it out of context. But recognize that they do tend to lean to the extremes, and it's very hard to find middle ground. And perhaps the only middle ground is that you do spread yourself across these platforms and you see what resonates and you try to give them all a reasonably equal opportunity. Now, I say that having posted all the front end stuff just to X because I knew that's where the engagement would be. That the times that I've tried it across the other ones, as yet, they're just not getting the traction. But also, only post some things to Facebook. Just about everything I post, I make public. So go to tryhunt.com, Facebook link. There's loads and loads of holiday photos in there about stuff that we've done over the last month that I didn't put on any other social platforms because I know that that sort of stuff works there. And I know that other stuff works if I only post it to LinkedIn. But don't come and give me grief because a piece of content that only exists on one platform, after I've put hours and hours into trying to do the right thing and do disclosure and notification, that one piece of content is the thing that I then share on every other platform. And I'll tell you what, there's only one platform that was complaining about the fact it was from X. That was the folks on Blue Sky. No one on any of the other platforms complained about that. And I think there's maybe something in that worth reflecting on. All right, what's an upbeat way to end this for the day? We are at what are we at now? 9:30 in the morning, 30th of December. We have New Year's tomorrow. I think we're just going over to friends, going and having some sunshine beers, as is the case in Australia this time of year. Whatever you're doing, I hope you have an awesome New Year's. I'm going to try and get ourselves back onto a normal schedule. It is a Monday today. I will try and do the next video in 4 days, obviously the first one, 2025. Try and get back to that schedule. As Warb says, Happy New Year for the week, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. Sorry about the audio problems in the past. And I hope I did justice to both those two major topics. Certainly for the first one on the front end stuff, we will be making some decisions on that pretty soon. And I think maybe one of the things I'm going to do just to fire that left side of the brain a bit more is go and find some templates I like as maybe a bit of a starting point for the bootstrap stuff. And if you do want to make a contribution, I love all the offers we've had about can I come and write front ends for you, and just the same way as a bunch of people wanted to do logo design and so on. If you do want to make a contribution, if you can find probably a Bootstrap 5 template that you think would be awesome for Have I Been Pwned to give us a head start, then drop me a message on any of the social platforms you like. I shall read them all. Thanks, folks. See you later.